हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। पहले की वीडियो में हम जॉफ्री चौसर के प्रोलॉग टू द कैंटरबरी टेल्स की लाइन 117 तक डिस्कस करते चुके हैं। आज हम लाइन 118 से लेकर 207 तक डिस्कस करेंगे। लाइन्स 118 to 164. The prioress was the head of a fashionable convent. She is a charming lady, none the less charming for her slight worldliness. She has a romantic name, Eglantine Wild-Rose. She has delicate table manners and is exquisitely sensitive to animal rights. She speaks French after a fashion. She has a pretty face and knows it. Her nun's habit is elegantly tailored and she displays discreetly a little tasteful jewelry, a gold brooch on a rosary embossed with the nicely ambiguous Latin motto Amor vincit omnia, that is, love conquers all. There was also a nun prioress. That of her smiling was full, simple, and coy. Her greatest oath was but by Saint Eloi, and she was clept Madame Eglantine. Full well she sang the service divine, entuned in her nose fully seemingly, and French she spoke full air and fatuously. After the school of Stratford at the Bow, for French of Paris was to her unknown, and meet well taught was she withal. She let no morsel from her lips fall, not nor wet her fingers in her sauce deep. Well could she carry a morsel and well keep that no drop no fell upon her breast. In courtesy was set full much her list, her over lippy whipped. She so clean that in her cup there was no farthing seen of grease when she drunken. Had her draught full seemly after her meat she wrought, and sickly she was of great desport and full pleasant and amiable of port, and pained her to counterfeit cheer of court, and be stately of manner, and to behold in dignity of reverence. But for to speak in of her conscience, she was so charitable and so piteous. She would weep if that she saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bled. Of small hounds had she that she fed with roasted flesh or milk, and we still bread. But sore wept she if one of them were dead, or if men smote it with a yard smart, and all was conscience and tender heart. Her personal appearance full seemly, her wimple pinched was, her nose stratus, her eye grey as glass, her mouth full small and thereto soft and red, but curly. She had a fair forehead, it was almost a span broad. True, for hardly she was not undergrow. Full feathers was her cloak, as I was wear, of small coral about her arm she bare a pair of beads gauded all with green, and thereon hung a brooch of gold full sheen, on which was written first a crown, after Amor vincit omnia. Her travelling companions, another nun, was with her, had she. That was her chaplain and priestess. The chaplain was a kind of administrative assistant to the prioress. In these lines, she's telling there was also a nun, a prioress, who was simple and sweet in her smiling, and whose greatest oath was merely by Saint Loy, and her name was Madame Eglantine. She sang the divine service fully well, and it was intoned in her nose in an excellent manner. She spoke French fluently and elegantly, according to the school of Stratford at Bow, because she did not know the French spoken in Paris. She was fully instructed in the manners to be observed at mealtime. She never let a morsel of food fall from her mouth. Nor did she dip her fingers deep into her sauce. She could handle a morsel very successfully, taking care that no drop ever fall on her breast. She took a particular interest in observing the table manners of a lady of fashion. She wiped her upper lip so clean that no trace of grease could be seen in her cup. When she had drunk the liquid from it, she picked up her food in a well bred manner, and certainly she was very cheerful, very pleasant, and amiable in her disposition. She took pains to follow the behavior prevalent at the royal court. She was dignified in her manner and behaved in such a way as to be held worthy of great respect. But to speak of her inner nature, she was so charitable and full of pity that she would weep if she saw a mouse caught in a trap. Whether the mouse was dead or bleeding, she kept some small dogs which she fed with roasted meat or with milk or bread of a fine quality. But she wept bitterly if any of the dogs died or if men hit any of them sharply with a stick. She was all feeling and tender hearted. Her wimple was most neatly pleated. She had a well shaped nose, eyes grey like glass. Her mouth was very small and it was also soft and red, but undoubtedly she had a fair forehead, which I believe was almost a span in breadth, because surely she was not undersized. I was aware that her cloak was very neat. About her arm she carried a small coral rosary which had large dividing bead of green, and on it there hung a brooch on the brightest gold, on which there was crown A, and then the words Love conquers all. She had with her another nun who was a chaplain, and she also had three priests with her. Lines 165 to 189. Another member of the church is the monk who, like the prioress, is supposed to stay in his monastery, but who, like her, finds an excuse to get away from it. Something he does a lot. He has long since lost any of the monastic idols he may have set out with, and he now prefers travel, good clothes, good food, good hunting with well equipped horses in place of the poverty, study, and manual labor prescribed by his monastic rule. He may not be a bad man, but he is not a good monk. A monk there was, a fair for the master, an outrider that loved venery. Venery means hunting, and the work of Venus goddess, goddess of love. This description of monk is larded with sexual innuendo, an outrider that love, a manly man to be an abbot, able, full many of dainty, that is valuable, precious, rare, horse, had he in stable, and when he rode, men might his bridle hear, and may jingle in a whistling wind as clear and ache as loud as does the chapel bell. There, as this Lord is keeper of the cell, the rule of Saint Maur or the Saint of Bennett, because that it was old and some deal straight, this elk monk let all things pass and held after the new world the space. He gave not of that text a pulled hen that says the hunters be not holy men, nor that a monk, when he is reckless, is like to a fish that's waterless, that is to say, a monk out of his cloister, but the text held he not worth an oyster. The poet pretends to agree with his lax view, and I said his opinion was good. What should he study and make himself wood upon a book in cloister, and always to bore or swinken is to toil with his hands and labor, and Sawston bids, how shall the world be served? The world be served. Let Austin have his swing to him reserved, his taste in sports and clothes. Therefore, he was a precursor, a right. Precursor is a hard rider, a true huntsman. There was a monk, a dominating kind of a man, an outrider whose duty it was to supervise the monastery's estates. One who loved hunting, the monk had many qualities and was competent to be the head of an abbey. He had quite a large number of valuable horses in his stable, and when he rode, people could hear the ringing of the chapel bell. There at the place where this lordly monk was head of the cell, he disregarded such old things as the rules of monastic discipline established by St. Maurice and St. Benedict, because their rules were, in his opinion, out of date and somewhat strict, and he followed the practices introduced by the new order of things. He did not give a plucked hen for that text which tells us that hunters are not only holy men, for the text according to which a monk, when he disobeys the regulations, is like a fish without water, or that such a monk is a monk without a cloister. But such a text he held to the worthless, and I said that this monk's opinion was commendable. Why should he study and drive himself mad by always poring over a book in the cloister? Or why should he work with his hands and toil as St. Augustine bids? How shall the wood be saved, either by hard study or by hard labor? Let St. Augustine keep his hard work for himself. Therefore, he was a true huntsman and kept himself busy with his hobby. Lines 190 to 207. Greyhounds he has swift as fowl in flight, of pricking and hunting, for the hare was all his lust, for no cause would he spare. I saw his sleeves puffed at the hand with gris, and that the finest of the land, and for to fasten his hood under his chin, he had of gold wire-wrought, a full curious pin, a love knot on the greater end. There was his physical appearance. His head was bald, that shone as any glass, and eke his face as he had been annoyed. He was a lord, full fat and in good point, his eye steep and rolling in his head, the steamed as a furnace of a lead, steamed as shone or glowed, his boot supple, his horse in great estate. Now certainly he was a fair prelate. He was not pale, as is a four-pinned ghost is fermented. A fat swan loved he best of any roast. His palfrey was as brown as any berry. He kept grey hands which were as swift as birds in flight. All his pleasure lay in tracking and hunting the hare, and to enjoy this pleasure he spared no cost. He kept greyhounds which were as swift. I saw his sleeves trimmed at the hand with grey fur of the finest quality available in the land, and in order to fasten his hood under his chin he had an intricate pin of wrought gold with a love knot in the larger end. His head was bald and shone like glass. His face also shone as if it had been anointed. He was a lord, fat, and in good circumstances or in shape. He had sharp eyes which rolled in his head and which glowed like a fire under a cauldron. His boots were supple. His horse was in fine shape. Now, without any doubt, he was a fair priest. He was not pale like a tormented ghost. Of all the roast meat, he loved a fat swan the best. The saddle horse which he rode was as brown as a berry. थैंक यू। आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको पसंद आई। कैसी लगी हमें कमेंट करके बताएं, और हमें ये अगर कोई सजेशंस तो वो भी आप हमें कमेंट करके बता सकते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। टिल देन कीप वॉचिंग एंड कीप सपोर्टिंग द सोलफुल डायरी। थैंक यू।